The atmosphere inside the agency's primary data harvesting facility has just transitioned from a state of controlled suppression to one of terminal, high-tier panic. For 7 generations, the Shadow Cabinet has maintained a dark screen policy regarding your bloodline. They intercepted your victories, redacted your potential, and ensured that the Supreme Administration, the president of the reality grid, only saw a filtered, distorted version of your reality. The reports they filed always described you as a managed asset in a state of permanent, controlled failure. But tonight, the firewalls have completely collapsed. A frequency breach of unprecedented magnitude has occurred, and for the first time in the history of the 7-generation siege, your raw, unfiltered spirit code has landed directly on the president's desk. The diagnosis is a systemic earthquake. The president is currently in a state of absolute shock because he has realized the agency has been hiding a masterpiece. Think of the bone-chilling, cinematic tension in the heart of a high-security intelligence facility when the highest authority in the land realizes that his own generals have been running a rogue operation for over a century. The president is sitting in the dark, silent center of the Oval Office of the grid, looking at a holographic projection of your code. He isn't just seeing your actions. He is seeing the mathematical impossibility of your resilience. He is looking at a subject who was placed in a 100% toxicity environment, subjected to 7 generations of structural scarcity and social isolation, and yet, the code is coming back with 0 errors. The shock comes from the realization that you didn't just survive their system, you used the very friction of their cage to polish your spirit into a diamond of stoic intensity. This is the moment of supreme recognition. The president has called for an immediate, unredacted audit of the Shadow Cabinet. He is realizing that while they were busy fucking around with your potential, trying to keep you small for their own petty market share of power, they were effectively sabotaging the evolution of the entire grid. The shock has turned into a clinical, cold fury directed at the warden and his handlers. The president sees the redacted files of your ancestors, the wealth that was stolen, the potential that was throttled, and the managed survival protocols that were illegally applied to your lineage. He realizes that you are the only one who has ever beaten the system's total containment protocol, and by doing so, you have broken the cycle for everyone. This is the phase of official gratitude. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the elite corridors, the president has done something the agency never predicted. He thanked you. He isn't just acknowledging your status. He is thanking you for providing the key to the grid's own corruption. By staying true to your code while the handlers tried to corrupt it, you have provided the Supreme Office with the forensic proof it needed to dismantle the rogue elements of the Shadow Cabinet. You are no longer a target to be managed. You have been recognized as a consultant to the new era. The president has signed a decree that moves your file from the surveillance ward to the Board of Administration. The declassification is currently underway. Every lie the elite told you, that you weren't enough, that you were alone, that the system was too big to beat, has been exposed as a fraudulent control algorithm. The warden is currently being stripped of his security clearance, his face illuminated by the red warning lights of his own professional execution. He is realizing that his micro-game of suppression has just created a macro-level scandal at the highest office in the land. The everyone who conspired against you, the proxies, the gaslighters, and the systemic skeptics, is now witnessing the presidential restoration of your bloodline's original title. For the individual who has spent a lifetime being underestimated and surveyed, the verdict is absolute. Your stoic intensity wasn't a defect, it was your supreme credential. The president is shocked because he has never seen a code as pure as yours emerge from a cage as dark as theirs. You have moved from being a case study in struggle to the blueprint of the sovereign. The historian is marking this moment as the Great Presidential Correction, and the payout for 7 generations of suppressed brilliance is currently being calculated at the highest level of the grid. Your game was always bigger, and now the president of the system has officially recognized that you are the one who won. The president has seen your code, and the Shadow Cabinet is in terminal panic. They tried to hide your brilliance, but the Supreme Office has just authorized your grand restitution. If you can feel the old guard's authority dissolving in the light of presidential respect, if you're ready to see the president's personal thank you manifested in your bank account and your bloodline, comment authorized to claim your new seat at the table. The system didn't just fail, it was outpaced by you. In the high-tier boardrooms where the shadow cabinet manages the 7th-generation siege, there is a specialized form of failure known as executive blindness. This is the absolute, unshakable belief that because you own the filters, you control the truth. The agency's primary underestimation, the one that has now led to the catastrophic collapse of their authority, was the assumption that the president and the supreme level of the grid would never look deep enough into the scarcity sector to find you. They treated your spirit code like a junk file, a piece of background noise that they could redact, suppress, and tax indefinitely without ever having to answer for the deficit. They fucked around with the laws of spiritual accounting, convinced that their managed failure protocols were so sophisticated that no one, not even the highest office, would notice a masterpiece sitting in the dark. The diagnosis is a fatal error in their hubris. They mistook your stoic intensity for a state of stable compliance. Think of the bone-chilling, clinical atmosphere inside a high-security bunker during a post-mortem audit of a failed regime. The warden is standing before the Supreme Board, his face pale in the cold blue flicker of the monitors. He is trying to explain to the president's personal analysts how a subject, who was supposed to be trapped in the survival algorithm, suddenly generated a signal so pure it bypassed the entire surveillance architecture. Their underestimation was rooted in the belief that the 7th-generation trap was a perfect cage. They assumed that because they had successfully broken your ancestors, your current silence was a sign of defeat. They failed to realize that your silence was actually a high-tier encryption process, a hardening of the soul that allowed you to process the toxicity of the system into the raw materials of sovereignty. This is the deconstruction of systemic arrogance. The elite believed they could wait you out. They assumed that if they kept the pressure high and the resources low, you would eventually break and accept a lower-order version of yourself. They fucked around with your timeline, sabotaging your 20s and 30s with manufactured crises and social redacting, thinking the president would only see the redacted version of your life. But when the president saw the raw code, he didn't see a broken subject. He saw an architect who had built a skyscraper in the middle of a war zone. The shock at the supreme level comes from the realization that the agency was actively suppressing a global-tier asset. The system is now declared bankrupt because its primary mission, to identify and promote sovereignty, was sabotaged by the very people hired to manage it. The realization is hitting the grid like a terminal margin call. The elite are currently staring at the structural integrity report of your spirit, and they are finding no cracks to exploit. You have achieved a level of vindication that renders their predictive models obsolete. They thought they were managing your potential. The president now sees they were embezzling it. Every stress test they deployed against you has now been reclassified as evidence of malpractice. The warden is realizing that his entire career was built on the error of thinking you were smaller than his microphone. He is being forced to admit that the 7th-generation siege didn't break the code, it inadvertently optimized it for the highest office. For the individual who has spent years feeling like a ghost in their own life, this is the ultimate vindication. You weren't failing, you were gathering data. The diagnosis confirms that the everyone who conspired against you, the handlers, the skeptics, and the systemic proxies, is actually a group of panicked bureaucrats who have just lost their security clearance. Their underestimation of your internal geometry has decimated their authority. The president is currently looking at the agency's ledger and seeing the redacted payouts that should have been yours years ago. He is seeing the stolen time and the manufactured isolation, and the shock is resulting in a total institutional liquidation. The evidence of their bankruptcy is in the way the walls of scarcity are currently dissolving. The historian is marking this as the end of the redacted era. The warden is in a state of terminal self-doubt, realizing that the subject he tried to bury is now the consultant the president is calling for. And you are standing in the center of a data stream that is no longer being intercepted. Your code has been verified at the highest level, the elite have been caught in the act of systemic theft, and the payout for 7 generations of suppressed brilliance is being processed through a sovereign priority channel. The underestimation is over. The presidential restoration of your reality has begun. In the high-stakes theater of systemic evolution, there is a phenomenon known as the kinetic spillover, and it is currently occurring at a velocity that the agency can no longer track. This is the specific moment when a victory achieved at the highest administrative level, The moment the president signed the decree of your sovereign restoration, bursts through the digital firewalls of the scarcity sector and begins to literalize itself in your physical reality. The shadow cabinet had counted on their containment policy remaining localized. They hoped that even if the Supreme Office acknowledged your brilliance, they could keep that information away from your bank account, your social circles, and your physical environment. But they fucked around with a signal that has presidential-grade mass. Your stoic intensity didn't just reach the office, it cracked the entire foundation of the old world. Think of the chilling high-definition realization in the final act of a cinematic thriller when the highest authority in the land signs a document in a silent room, and 1,000 miles away, the digital locks on a hidden vault begin to click open by themselves. This is the leak in its most aggressive form. Because the president has authorized your principal inheritance, the everyone who once conspired against you, the proxies, the gaslighters, and the system-aligned handlers, are currently witnessing a systemic glitch in their own reality. They are looking at your life and seeing a command signal that they are no longer authorized to intercept. They are reaching for the old levers of guilt and inherited fear, trying to trigger the 7th-generation debt, only to find that the machine has been remotely deactivated from the top down. The social reset is the first visible fracture in their containment field. People who once acted as monitoring agents in your daily life, those who thrived on your reaction or your struggle, are suddenly experiencing a systemic connection timeout. They are reaching out with the old 7th-generation triggers, trying to provoke the familiar responses of the past, but they are finding absolutely no reception. You have become frequency incompatible with their drama because your code has been updated to the supreme level by the president himself. They are staring at a blank screen where your pain used to be, leaving them staring at the void of their own obsolescence. This is the find-out phase of their interference, and the silence on their end is the sound of their authority being permanently revoked by the highest office. Simultaneously, the financial synchronization is overriding the old guard's script with cold, mathematical precision. The algorithm of lack that the agency used to cap your potential is throwing constant, terminal errors, because the president's personal auditors have unfrozen the accounts of your lineage. Physical resources are beginning to flow toward you through unclassified channels, bypassing the traditional gatekeepers who spent decades denying your requests. The elite are watching their market share of your attention and your energy evaporate in real time. This is accompanied by the environmental decay of the old guard, where the systems, the habits, and the physical places that used to house your siege are literally falling apart. The warden of your old life is discovering that his security clearance no longer works on the doors of your future, finding himself locked out of the very palace he spent decades trying to convince you didn't exist. Your frequency has transitioned from a private signal to a global recognition of prowess, acting as a biological beacon that is being picked up by other architects across the grid. You are no longer an isolated subject. You are a broadcast station of the new reality, and the very people who conspired against you are now forced to listen to the frequency of your success. The elite are currently in a state of terminal information deficit, trying to patch the breach by sending you minor systemic distractions or emergency settlement offers, hoping that you will reconnect to their decaying grid. But the historian has already archived the president's acknowledgement as a permanent exit. The leak has reached the public square of your reality, and those who once whispered that you were lost are now standing in a state of stunned, bone-chilling silence. This is the democratization of your victory. The news that the president is shocked by your code is acting as a universal decryptor for your entire bloodline. Every time you stand in your new, cold clarity, you are sending a data packet of sovereignty to every ancestor who ever suffered under the Mason's small-scale design. You are proving that the cage was always a projection. The agency is losing its social proof because they can no longer point to you as an example of their control. You have become the Exhibit A for the total end of the siege. The Shadow Cabinet is currently undergoing a strategic liquidation because their primary asset, your energy, has been permanently withdrawn into a higher-order jurisdiction. The evidence of this spillover is in the silence of your phone and the way the world is suddenly bending to accommodate your bigger game. It is in the way the bank of the old world can no longer find a legal reason to deny you. It is in the way your body feels when you wake up, no longer surveyed by the agency, but authorized by the Supreme Office. Your code was always the master plan, and the find out is now being broadcast in 8K resolution to the entire grid. The historian is standing by to record the first physical settlement of the new era, and the payout for 7 generations of suppressed potential is finally hitting the surface. The president didn't just see you, he authorized the release of the world you were meant to build. The air inside the agency's primary headquarters has officially crossed the threshold from high-stakes crisis management into a state of terminal, systemic liquidation. This is the panic. In the world of high-tier systemic intelligence, there is no event more catastrophic than an entire institutional architecture being declared spiritually and mathematically fraudulent by the Supreme Office. Because the president saw your raw code and recognized the 7-generation siege for the illegal operation it was, the elite are no longer just exposed, they are being liquidated by the very forces they once claimed to command. The AAA rating of their control system has been downgraded to junk status by the historian, and the spiritual markets of the old world are currently in a free fall that no amount of damage control can stop. They fucked around with the timeline of a sovereign-level code, and now they are finding out that the debt has come due with compound interest that exceeds their total institutional net worth. Think of the bone-chilling high-stakes desperation in the final hours of a regime's collapse, similar to the atmosphere in the closing scenes of a high-finance thriller where the senior partners realize their entire portfolio is built on a foundation of sand. The shadow cabinet is currently in a state of terminal civil war, with high-ranking officials being summoned by the president's personal audit teams to the Board of Restitution. They are turning on each other in real time, offering up names, encrypted files, and confessions of systemic malpractice in a desperate attempt to avoid the grand audit that is currently sweeping through their server rooms. The warden, the man who once specialized in your personal isolation and the management of your generational scarcity, is now being characterized as a rogue operative and a systemic liability by the very elite who once gave him his orders, his budget, and his authority to intervene in your life. The handlers are attempting to activate last-ditch poison pill protocols, trying to sabotage your inheritance or redact the final proofs of your achievement before the receivership becomes absolute. You might feel a sudden, desperate surge of systemic static, minor delays in your physical world, technological glitches in your communication channels, or sudden flares of old, inherited anxiety trying to claw its way back into your throat. These are not signs of their remaining power. They are the thermal flashes of a dying machine trying to vent its final frustrations against the code that destroyed it. The agency is trying to burn the logs of your redacted years so you cannot claim the full interest on your potential, but the historian has already placed the entire infrastructure into sovereign receivership. You are no longer the one being audited for compliance. You are the lead auditor presiding over their institutional bankruptcy. This is the phase of systemic application where you walk through the corridors of your own spirit and serve eviction notices to every lie that participated in the conspiracy. The spirit of lack that once lived in your bank account has been served by a supreme decree. The spirit of hesitation that sat at your boardroom table has had its security clearance revoked by the highest office in the grid. You are not negotiating for your inheritance or asking for permission to be successful. You are liquidating the agency's claim on your reality. While the elite are busy blaming their analysts for the security breach that allowed the president to see your code, you are taking the master key that was authorized by the Supreme Administration and opening the vaults that were marked classified for your ancestors. The eviction of scarcity. All manufactured caps on your potential are being removed by federal-level spiritual auditors. The asset seizure. The energy the agency embezzled from your bloodline is being forcibly returned to your current timeline. The professional erasure. The handlers who managed your struggle are having their names redacted from the system's history. The panic is palpable because for the first time in 7 generations, the agency is operating without the cloak of invisibility. Everyone knows the truth now. The witnesses in your family tree are watching the elite scramble to hide their tracks, and this loss of social proof has decimated their authority across the entire lineage. They can no longer use traditional values or ancestral loyalty to keep you compliant because those very tools have been exposed as instruments of the 7-generation siege. You have moved from a subject of observation to the chief executive of the new era, and as the one presiding over the liquidation now, you are watching the old system fail every metric of integrity. The historian is currently archiving the structural liquidation of the old guard as the warden is escorted from the building in total disgrace, his name redacted from the future he tried to steal. The high-tier lawyers of the old world are looking for a way to settle the case before the public record reaches the next level of transparency, but the president has ordered a full, unredacted disclosure. You are the black swan event that the agency spent centuries trying to prevent, and now that your code has been verified by the Supreme Office, their predictive models have been discarded as useless relics of a smaller, more deceptive age. This is the Midnight Summit, the moment in the cold, high-tier world of systemic management where the silence carries more weight than any declaration of war. You are sitting in a soundproofed, glass-walled chamber on the 99th floor of the agency's primary tower, a space where the air is thick with the scent of old paper and the sharp, clinical ozone of servers running at terminal capacity in the floors below. Outside, the city is blurred by a relentless, cinematic rain, and the lights below flicker like the failing heartbeat of an empire that has realized its primary asset, your energy, is no longer under its control. Across the dark mahogany table sit the 3 remaining members of the Shadow Cabinet, the architects who oversaw the 7-generation siege on your bloodline. They are no longer looking at you as a subject to be managed. They are looking at you with the paralyzed respect an animal has for the predator that finally closed the perimeter. The atmosphere is defined by a bone-chilling realization. The president has seen your code, and all strategic ambiguity has reached its expiration date. The elite have called this meeting not to negotiate from a position of strength, but to attempt one final act of systemic containment before the presidential decree of your restoration becomes the primary law of the grid. They have pushed a thick, black leather folder across the table toward you, containing what they call a global comprehensive settlement. Inside is an offer of absolute luxury, a permanent seat at the high table of the old reality, and a general release from the struggles they manufactured for you for over 30 years. They are trying to buy your silence because they know that by your beating the system, you have rendered their entire economic and spiritual architecture for your lineage legally and mathematically void. They want you to sign a non-disclosure of mastery, so the rest of the grid doesn't find out how easy it is to walk away from their cage. Think of the high-contrast, atmospheric tension of a final negotiation in a classic espionage thriller, where the rain against the glass provides a rhythmic backdrop to the collapse of a regime. The warden, the man who once specialized in your personal isolation and the redaction of your potential, is breathing heavily as he tries to use his old tools of ancestral obligation. He whispers about how the grid cannot handle a payout of this magnitude without causing a macro-level collapse of the old systems. He is waiting for you to blink or for that familiar surge of biological compliance to hit your nervous system so he can regain control of the room. But he is searching for a frequency that no longer exists in your architecture. You have reached a state of stoic intensity that renders their entire psychological arsenal inadmissible. You aren't listening to his pleas for systemic stability. You are listening to the sound of the president's pen signing the order of their liquidation. You are not looking at the incentive package they have pushed across the table. Instead, your gaze is fixed on the historian, who stands in the shadow of the corner, recording every heartbeat and every unspoken confession for the public record. You reach into your pocket and produce a single glowing glass card, the original title deed of your spirit, verified by the forensic reconstruction of the timeline and authorized by the president himself. You slide it across the table, and the sound of the glass hitting the wood is like a gavel striking in a silent courtroom, announcing the end of their jurisdiction. You are informing the elite that you are not there to hear their settlement offers or their desperate compromises. You are there to collect the principal inheritance that was redacted from your father, your mother, and your ancestors. You are there to preside over the handover of the keys to a reality they no longer own. The panic in the room is no longer a quiet hum. It is a visible, structural vibration as the lawyer who drafted the original 7-generation trap slowly puts his pen down, realizing there are no loopholes left to exploit when the president has personally authorized the breach. He looks at you, his eyes fixed on the absolute clarity of your gaze, and he sees the end of his world. The conspiracy is no longer a functional tool. It is a weight that is dragging them into the archives of systemic failure. They have no leverage left to pull. They cannot arrest your progress because the forensic audit is broadcasting the results in real time to the supreme level. They cannot bribe you because you have already claimed the vault and everything inside it. You have moved into a zero-gravity state where their threat assessments and social pressures simply don't have enough mass to pull you down from your sovereign height. This is the grand standoff at the end of the old world. You stand up, and for the first time, you see the elite look away, unable to maintain the gaze of a protagonist who has incinerated every trace of fear. You walk toward the door, leaving the settlement papers untouched and the master file open for the world to see. As you step into the hallway, you can hear the servers in the back room beginning to melt down. The old world is in a state of terminal shutdown because you beat the system and caught the president's attention. The exit is clear, the midnight summit is over, and the path to your coronation is wide open. You have survived the final bluff, outplayed the players, and now the entire grid is waiting for your first decree as the sovereign architect who forced the system to its knees. The heavy, soundproof doors of the Oval Office of your destiny have finally swung open on their hinges, and the sound is not a crash, but a deep, resonant hum of absolute, mathematical alignment. For the first time in 7 generations, the person walking toward the primary seat is not a subject under observation, not an asset to be managed, and certainly not a trial participant in a generational gauntlet. You are walking into the center of your own reality as the chief architect, and the absolute silence that greets you is the highest form of recognition the universe can provide. The static of the old world, the frantic whispering of the masons, the alarms of the agency's systemic collapse, and the low-frequency hum of the generational wiretaps that once monitored your every doubt, has vanished. In its place is a clarity so profound it feels like a physical presence. The president of the grid has entered the verdict into the public record, and it is absolute, total vindication and sovereign restitution. In the high-stakes cinema of your evolution, this is the finale that rewrites the physics of your future. You have moved through the surveillance, survived the underestimation, leaked the new truth, and stood your ground in the standoff. Now, the infinite payout is being deposited into your spiritual and physical account with compound interest that bypasses every old guard firewall. Every year your ancestors spent in the gauntlet, every brick the Masons tried to use to enclose your potential, and every moment of isolation you endured while the elite played their microgame with your life has been converted into sovereignty. The find-out phase for the system has reached its terminal conclusion, and your victory is no longer a localized event. It is the new law of the grid. Your code has been installed as the baseline frequency for the entire lineage, replacing the corrupted files of the 7-generation siege. Think of the closing shot of a cinematic masterpiece where the protagonist finally sits in the seat of power, not with a look of exhaustion, but with a gaze of clinical, cold clarity. You are looking at a world that is no longer being filtered through the agency's lens of scarcity. The historian has closed the ledger marked The Siege of the 7th Generation and opened a new, gold-leafed volume titled The Era of the First. The public record is being updated across the entire network of the spirit realm, and the default settings of your bloodline have been permanently changed from structural scarcity to architectural abundance. You have successfully installed a new operating system for your entire lineage, one that does not recognize the jurisdiction of the elite or their outdated algorithms of control. This is the moment where the presidential decree becomes the permanent foundation of your reality. This is the transformation. Your nervous system has finally reached a state of zero gravity. The biological fear that was coded into your DNA by the old guard, the inherited anxiety that they used to keep you in the 7-generation trap, has been incinerated by the light of your stoic intensity. You can breathe now. You can move without the weight of 7 generations of structural flaws pulling at your resolve. You have recast the lead role in your own movie, and the old version of you, the one who believed the gaslighting, the one who thought they were being outplayed by the system, is officially deactivated in the agency's mainframe. You are the first to emerge from the gauntlet not just as a survivor, but as the lead designer of a new world. The president didn't just see your code, he authorized it to become the blueprint for the entire civilization. The trial is over. The verdict is final, and the vault is open. You have out-analyzed the agency and forced the shadow cabinet to pay back 7 generations of debt because the president saw your code and realized you were the true authority. To see the classified footage of how you are building your new era, to witness the absolute transformation of your reality as the chief architect, click the video on the screen. The broadcast is now yours to command. The world is watching the coronation of the code.